You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. To read the full notice of your rights and protections, go to www.bostonregionmpo.org/MPO underscore NON underscore DISCRIMINATION. Excuse me. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Sean Rourke via the chat box or at srourke@ctps.org or 857-702-3705. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Sean Rourke of the MPO staff at srourke@ctps.org or call him at 857-702-3705. First item on the agenda is the chair's report, and I do have one. I'd like to officially announce that we have formed the TIP subcommittee, and their first meeting is today at what time, Tegan?
1 o'clock.
Thank you. And the members of that committee are Jen Rowe, who has kindly agreed to be the chair from the city of Boston, John Alessi from the town of Arlington, John Bouchard from MassDOT, Eric Barassa from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Leonard Diggins from the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, Dennis Giambetti from the Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham, Kristen Guichard from the Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination in the town of Acton, Rob King from the town of Brookline, Derek Cravat from MassDOT, Brad Rawson from the Intercore Committee and the City of Somerville. Thank you all for agreeing to be on the committee, and hopefully you all got the email that the meeting is today. I think that's it for me. So the next agenda item is for Tegan. Whenever you're ready, Tegan.
Thank you, David. So I will provide the Executive Director's report. As usual, I'd like to start with some staffing updates. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to announce another new colleague. I actually mentioned that we will have several new staff starting next week, so we'll look forward to introducing them to you in the coming future board meetings. And then in addition, we'll have another new colleague joining us in November. And this person will be the transportation planner with a focus on our bicycle and pedestrian activities in the multimodal planning and design group. And you may recall that Casey is the program manager and Kyle Casiglia will join us to help support and supplement those efforts. And then I also wanted to highlight that while we have a number of job postings still up on our website, there are 2 newly posted job ads, and those are the program manager for the long range transportation plan. We've been waiting to post that until we had a manager for the team coming back on board. And then also a new position to manage the model development team. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of engagement going on right now. I've mentioned previously, and I just want to keep you up to date on the sub-regional engagement that's going on. So our staff is joining with MAPC staff to attend sub-regional meetings to talk about, at this point in time, the TIP and really discuss and understand better the sub-regional transportation priorities. So I just wanted to highlight that a number of those were completed this week. That includes the TRIC, the NSPC, and the NSTF, North Suburban Planning Council and North Shore Task Force sub-region meetings. Those have been completed. We also are meeting with South Shore Coalition this afternoon at 2 p.m. if you're interested in joining. And there will be another joint sub-regional meeting being held next week between Magic and Metro West next Tuesday on August 24th. So as always, please, we strongly encourage board members or those that you work with to attend the sub-regional meetings. And they're great ways to connect with those sub-regional contacts and also hear the sort of broader needs of the sub-region. The meetings will all be virtual, and you can contact Stella Jordan if you have any questions about the meetings. Next slide, please. I've also been highlighting that staff have been attending a number of in-person events this fall as well to more directly engage with community members in different parts of the region. And at these, they've been working on sharing accessible, some kind of summary information about the MPO and our work and discuss transportation needs. So 2 upcoming events are the Mattapan Square Farmers Market. It's on Saturday, October 21st from 10 to 1. And then also the Open Streets event in Somerville on Sunday, October 22nd from 2 to 6. So you're welcome to stop by and visit our tables if you're in the area that these are occurring. And then also, if you have ideas about how we can go to any in-person events in your communities and municipalities, please reach out and connect with Stella Jordan again to discuss. We would appreciate it. Next slide. Lastly, in terms of engagement, there is quite a bit of TIP, Transportation Improvement Program engagement going on right now. And we wanted to highlight for board members that there are a few info sessions coming up, one on Thursday, November 2nd at 3 p.m. and another Thursday, November 9th at 10 a.m. And the sessions, they'll be recorded, so you'll be able to share them more broadly. But just to highlight that the audience for these meetings are really municipalities that are interested in initiating or advancing projects in the TIP. So please share those dates, those times, or if you'd like to, those recordings with your colleagues and networks if you're interested. And the contact for these are Ethan LaPointe. On to today's agenda. So you have a few action items. You'll be asked to vote to endorse the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, which has been out for public comment. And then we'll also ask you to vote to release the first amendment for the 24 to 28 TIP out for public comment. We will have one presentation also from Ethan LaPointe and Logan Casey on the Transit Transformation Program. This has been a series of presentations that have happened over the last few board meetings. So they'll continue to discuss the evolution and establishment of the Transit Transformation Program, which will be included in the 25 to 29 TIP. And then also, there are 2 agenda items for your discussion. So I will just introduce these and then ask you all to discuss and deliberate. And those 2 items are giving us more guidance on an agenda topic you'd like to see at the annual meeting on November 30th. And then also asking you all to consider how you would like to, as a board, respond to requests when there are one for providing letters of support for federal discretionary grants. So more to come on that to set up the discussion. Next slide. So just a reminder of our next meetings. A good reminder is that the next one on November 2nd, the elections will be complete. So it will be the beginning of our new members' terms. And then after November 2nd, the next MPO meeting will be on, I believe it's the 4th Thursday, November 30th. So after the Thanksgiving holiday at 10 a.m. And that will be our in-person and hybrid annual meeting at the 2nd floor boardroom at the State Transportation Building. So with that, I can turn it back to any questions if there are any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment at this time? Seeing none, if you want to comment during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next item on the agenda is committees chairs reports. Are there any? Derek Cravat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to let everyone know that the Unified Planning Work Program Committee will be meeting a week from today on October 26th at 1 p.m. We'll be discussing an adjustment to the federal fiscal year 2024 UPWP to add an MBTA grant that was awarded for the Area of Persistent Poverty program. That is to design electric bus charging infrastructure at Ashmont Station. And because it's a planning grant, FTA requires that we add that to the UPWP. So we'll be discussing that. There will also be presentations on the equity program and the public engagement program UPWP work happening in fiscal year 2024. So just want to let everyone know that meeting's again, October 26th at 1 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions for Derek? Any other committee chairs reports? Now we're going to take a break and go back to introductions because thank you, Tegan. Tegan reminded me that I totally skipped introductions and went right into my chair's report. I was so excited about the TIP committee. So can you please call the roll?
MassDOT seat 1.
This is David Moeller. I represent Secretary Monica Tibbet-Nuts.
Thank you. MassDOT seat 2.
Geez, I thought it was just me. This is John Bouchard representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Thank you. MassDOT Highway Division.
Juan Romano, MassDOT Highway here.
Thank you. MBTA.
Good morning, Good morning, this is Allie Clayman, representing General Manager Eng and the MBTA.
Thank you. Massport.
Hi, good morning. This is Sarah Lee representing Massport.
Thank you. MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Thank you. MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning, Amara Patterson representing the MBTA Advisory Board, as well as Brian Kane. Hello.
I'm here too.
Thank you. Advisory Council.
Leonard Diggins Advisory Council here.
City of Boston BTD.
Jen took herself off mute, but I couldn't hear her. But she's here. I can see her.
Thank you. City of Boston BPDA.
Hey, Jim Fitzgerald with BPDA representing Mayor Wu and City of Boston. Jen is here, as David said.
Thank you. At large city, City of Everett.
Jen changed your earphones. Go ahead, Jen.
I did. Jen here with changed earphones. Thank you. Representing BTD.
Go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
And good morning, Eric Molinari, sitting in for Jay Monty and representing Mayor DeMarco and the City of Everett.
Thank you. At large City of Newton.
I do not see a representative for Newton.
Thank you. At large Town of Arlington.
Good morning. John Alessi representing Select Board Chair Eric Hellmuth in the Town of Arlington.
Thank you. At large Town of Brookline.
Morning all, Rob King representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green in the Town of Brookline.
Thank you. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom. Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Ballantyne in the Intercore.
Thank you. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard representing Jim Snyder Grant, Select Board for the Town of Acton for the Magic Subregion.
Thank you. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti representing Metro West and Mayor Suzuki of Framingham.
Thank you. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Nguyen, North Shore Task Force representing Mayor Cahill and the City of Beverly.
Thank you. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
Melissa Tintaglis representing Town of Burlington and the North Suburban Planning Council.
Thank you. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Chris Diorio representing Greg Gray, Select Board Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Medway.
I do not see a representative from Medway.
Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood, Neponset River Regional Chamber.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the Town of Norwood representing the Trek Subregion.
Thank you. And our ex officio members, Federal Highway Administration.
Good morning, Ken Miller, Federal Highway.
Thank you. Federal Transit Administration.
I do not see anyone from FTA.
Thank you. That calls the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And thanks for the reminder, Tegan. Next item on our agenda is the Regional Transportation Advisory Council report. Leonard Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so our last meeting last week, as promised, we had a nice presentation by Betsy Harvey. She gave us a deeper introduction to the story maps, which are the way we are doing the needs assessment. And we also had a really good presentation by Sam Taylor, being as the MPO sets out on remaking his performance-based dashboard And we had an election and even though last year I'd said that I was willing to step down, I made it clear that it wasn't because I was tired of being on the MPO. If anything, I very much enjoy being here. And so my colleagues made an uncontested election and put me up for a 5th term, and I'm really excited about it. I don't take it for granted, and I plan on working even harder. And as I said, I enjoy working with you all a lot. I really appreciate your indulgence in all of my questions, especially staff who I talk with some frequency after the meetings. And I'm particularly looking forward to working with Stella because Stella Jordan, not only she's been a really big asset be to the advisory council, but she has some really good ideas about how we can do outreach that I think will not only benefit the advisory council, but also the MPO and other transportation related entities in the region. So with that, I look forward to next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'd just like to note for the record, I'm not sure it's possible for you to work harder. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of August 17th. Can we get a motion and a second to approve minutes? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 17th.
Jen Rowe.
Dan Rowe, I will second Eric's motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Ali Clayman,
Allie Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Amira Patterson.
Amira Patterson, yes.
thank you. Glenn Diggins,
Leonard Dugas, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Gishard,
Kristen Gishard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos,
yes.
Christy Orio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
David Kozis has joined the meeting. Can you call on him to vote too, please?
David Kozis,
David Kostas, yeah, sorry for being late.
No worries. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sam. Next item on the agenda is the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. Betsy Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm here to ask the MPO to endorse the 2023 Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, or Coordinated Plan. I presented the draft Coordinated Plan on September 21st, after which it was released for a 15-day public comment period, which closed on October 6th. The MPO endorsement draft is now posted on the meeting calendar. Now, the primary purpose of the coordinated plan is to guide applicants in their development of their applications for FTA's Section 5310 program, the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, which is known as the Community Transit Grant Program in Massachusetts. Applications for that program have to address the need identified in the coordinated plan with the goal of improving coordination among transit agencies and human service transportation providers to better meet the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities in the region. The plan documents their needs, recommends strategies to address those needs, and identifies priorities for the region. During the public comment period, we received 2 comments. Overall, commenters were supportive of the content of the 2023 coordinated plan and offered suggestions for expanding connections in future coordinated plans with other related initiatives such as Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero planning, and with other non-transportation agencies such as Health and Human Services. Other suggestions included adding needs about bicycling infrastructure that is safe for people of all ages, including seniors and people with disabilities, as a way to support access to public transit. So I'm happy to take any questions for you now, and then I ask for you to endorse the 2023 coordinated plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Are there any questions for Betsy? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to adopt this as presented today? Eric Barassa.
Eric Barras, I'll make a motion to adopt the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
I'll second that. Taking seconds.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Ally Clayman,
Ally Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Amira Patterson,
Amira Patterson, yes.
Glenn Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Eric Molinari, yes.
Eric Molinari.
Eric, thank you. David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tintakis,
Melissa Tintakis, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item is Amendment 1 on the Transportation Improvement Program. Ethan LaPointe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan LaPointe. I am the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. Purpose of this presentation today, if we jump on to the next slide, is to run through Amendment 1 of the new TIP. So as of last Friday, the statewide Transportation Improvement Program was approved by Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, so it is now in effect. For the federal fiscal year's 2024 program, this first amendment proposes the programming of Boston's Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant from the federal fiscal year's 2022 round. It is also the reprogramming of 3 Border to Boston Trail design earmarks, which were initially programmed in the federal fiscal year's 2023-27 TIP, but due to contracting delays are just being moved now into federal fiscal year 2024. Afterwards, there is a cost increase for one statewide highway project, which is also moving in from the statewide program into the regional transportation improvement program. It also includes the addition of those 3 projects, one of those being this guide signs project from the federal fiscal years 2023-27 STIP into the federal fiscal years 24-28 TIP for project readiness, and also due to the geographical context of the projects. I will explain that once we actually get to those specific items. With that, if we move on to the next slide, the first one is the addition of a new project. This is Boston's Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant, which was a $9 million award for the city of Boston to implement safety countermeasures at 9 key intersections for specifically pedestrian hazards to improve safety for all transportation facility users. On the next slide, we can start getting into the earmark discretionary projects. So for those who may not recall, these are the Border to Boston Trail design earmarks. This was one earmark, identification number MA271, I believe, which was actually split between several municipalities, 3 of which were in the Boston region, to design the Border to Boston Rail Trail. This includes Peabody, Salem, and Marblehead within our region, and is a move out of federal fiscal year 2023 in the 23-27 TIP into the 24-28 TIP, as their contracts were not fully executed before the end of the federal fiscal year. These earmarks specifically are $375,000 apiece for Peabody and Salem, and $175,000 for Marblehead for design only. Moving on to the next slide for the statewide highway funding projects. This first project is another one from the federal fiscal years 23-27 TIP. This is the intersection improvements at 2 intersections on Broadway. The programmed year for this project has been adjusted, as well it was previously in federal fiscal year 2023 within the 23-27 TIP. Its add date has been shifted outward to December 30th, 2023, based on project readiness. The amendment that was performed to this project in the last TIP was to increase its cost. Moving on to the next slide, we also have our other shifts here. These 2 projects on screen here, first off being Boston to Cambridge's bridge preservation of Elliott Street over the Charles River, and the second being Gloucester and Peabody's guide and traffic sign replacement on Route 128, were previously incorporated under the statewide section of the statewide transportation improvement program. This means that they weren't necessarily confined to a specific region. However, as the names of these projects indicate, the limits of work here are entirely confined within the Boston region, so they're being counted here as well. So the Cambridge project is simply being moved into the program. There is no adjustment in its start year or in its overall budget of $6.97 million. And the second project, Gloucester and Peabody's guide and traffic sign replacement project, is actually seeing a budget increase all in the statewide program of $1.7 million up to $2.297 million. And the reason why I say that is that the cost on screen here is actually $1,100 higher than is actually necessary. There's a small budget decrease about 15 minutes before the meeting. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide, given that this is an amendment to the federal fiscal years 24-28 TIP, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to release it for a 21-day public comment period. This public comment period will commence next Monday and on October 23rd and conclude November 13th, 2023. With that, open to having questions on this.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions for Ethan? Jen Rowe.
Not so much a question, but just a comment and an expression of gratitude to MPO staff and MassDOT for the assistance with the Safe Streets for All program. I just wanted to share a few things about the intersections for anyone who's interested. 2 intersections folks here may be very familiar with in that they're adjacent to the State Transportation Building, Stewart Street and Tremont Street, and Neelan Street and Washington Street. Another intersection is one I passed through on my way to work today, Dot Ave and Boston Street. And then there are 3 intersections adjacent to Franklin Park, Seaver and Walnut, Blue Hill and Columbia, and Blue Hill and American Legion. And then 2 other intersections in Dorchester, Claiborne, Tonawanda, and Wainwright and Brent. Collectively, these intersections represent a number of high crash locations in Boston, and also are located in environmental justice communities, I think all except 2. So I just wanted to share a few points about that work and express our gratitude for this funding.
Thank you, Jen. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to release this for a 21-day public comment period? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Eric Barassa.
I'll make all the motions. I'll make a motion to release this for a 21 public comment period, 21-day public comment period.
Thank you. John Alessi.
John Alessi, I will second that.
Thank you. Motion hasn't been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Allie Clayman,
Hallie Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Amira Patterson,
Amira Patterson, yes.
Glenn Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jeff Fitzgerald, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
Rob King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Gishard,
Kristen Gishard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tintakis,
Melissa Tintakis, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Sam. Next item on the agenda is the Transit Transformation Program. Ethan Lapointe and Logan Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be covering the full part of this presentation today because Logan is actually covering one of those sub-regional outreach meetings right now for North Suburban Planning Council. But this presentation is going to cover kind of the final transit transformation program with the completion of the scope of work that was initiated back in federal fiscal years 2023. So first off, prior to when this was discussed today, has been the incorporation of additional feedback from the September 21st, I believe, meeting on the Transit Transformation Program update, or maybe September 18th. This includes adjustments to scoring criteria and project types, which I will get to in this discussion, and some overall high-level remarks regarding to the administration of the Transit Transformation Program, along with upcoming dates for project applications and discussion there. So with that, if we can move on to the next slide. As part of today's presentation, MPO staff included the Transit Transformation Memo and Final Transit Transformation Project Scorecard on the MPO calendar, which are available for reference throughout this discussion here. Moving on to the next slide to cover changes in that scorecard in response to member feedback. Staff have made some tweaks, some of which will actually propagate through all investment program scorecards in response to some comments received as part of the draft evaluation criteria. This includes adjustments to how the resilience framework is being portrayed within the project scorecard. Emphasis here has changed to further emphasize extreme temperature events, whereas previously the language only referred to incidences of extreme heat and mitigation there. These changes will also be reflected in all other investment programs as well, not just transit transformation. Moreover, within the access and connectivity category, further emphasis has been applied on pedestrian connections to and from transit areas. This is being done through the addition of an equity multiplier, which functionally means that there is more weight on specific pedestrian connections here. Overall, however, there is still no change in point allocations across each of the scoring categories, and it all still adds up to 100 points to that end. If we move on to the next slide, as I mentioned previously, this final transit transformation scorecard is available on the MPO calendar for reference not only by board members, but any project proponents interested in seeking applications for funding through this program. This is one scorecard for all project types and applicants here. So whether you are a municipality looking for a transit signal priority or a bus lane project, or you are a regional transportation authority or the MBTA for a capital project or something else, this scorecard is the same for all. Scorecards for all other investment programs, such as complete streets and intersection improvements, are still in development, but will be posted by November 1st with the start of the application period. With that, if we move on to the next slide, I'd like to kind of do a review on specific category areas and projects that board members may be able to expect to see over the next year, broken out by the municipal project, by the different kinds of project proponents. Starting off here, for federal fiscal year 2025, as some board members may recall, there's increased emphasis for this first year on projects submitted and received for regional transit authorities. These include project types such as bus transit hub improvements, operational facility expansion and repair, including personnel facilities, intelligent transportation systems, referring to things like sensors or other technologies that help to deliver transit services, and also facilitating a low or no emission vehicle transition through limited fleet procurements and supportive infrastructure like charging equipment for these kinds of fleets. Moreover, I have some text here on the screen that says possible larger contracts with options for smaller RTAs. The idea here being that one procurement could be conducted for one or more RTAs within the Boston region to capitalize on for that kind of smaller scale fleet procurement, as has been done previously, for example, as with the Merrimack Valley RTA, with the Cape Ann Transportation Authority and the Greater Attleboro and Taunton Regional Authority. The images on screen here show 35-foot low-floor hybrid electric buses for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority that were procured through that program. If we go on to the next slide to speak directly to MBTA project types, one of the kind of balances here is the notion of not only is there a set aside within the transit transformation program in the 25 to 29 tip, but also kind of the continuation of state of good repair and also larger scale capital projects within the transit transformation program as well. This includes station accessibility improvements, which focus on things like ADA accessibility and compliance with ADA standards, and also improved pedestrian and micro-mobility connections. There's also kind of foundational, no-nonsense, no-regrets investments for improvements to service frequencies, things like the rail transformation projects, and improvements to the commuter rail in the form of tracks and signals for better service frequencies, reduced headways, and also to facilitate future electrification efforts. There's also opportunities for further improvements to bus transit stations and stops throughout the MBTA network, and also improvements to signage and wayfinding through the Community Connections program as well, and transit transformation. And moving on to municipal project opportunities. So, with the advent of the transit transformation program, the MPO will be continuing to support bus lane implementation and transit signal priority projects. While they were previously within the Community Connections program, they are now accounted for under here. Also, any transit improvements that are currently in other programs, such as the Complete Streets program, will still continue to be supported. So if there is a Complete Streets project that your community is pursuing where you are adding in a bus lane, that does not necessarily mean that it becomes a transit transformation program. It may still remain in Complete Streets. Still that overlap there. What is new is something that was initially included within the kind of vision of the Community Connections program, but was not directly or received a long-term implementation. Within the Community Connections program, there will be a pedestrian and bicycle-focused wayfinding signage program. However, by virtue of how that scope of work has intersections with transit projects, the Community Connections program will also include transit supportive signage within that kind of overall contract with pedestrian and bike program. Again, this is another case of kind of that overlapping investment where transit investments will still continue to appear in other MPO investment programs. With that, to kind of discuss program administration at a higher level here, move on to the next slide. So this is a discussion really about how the transit transformation program will function when it comes to project scenario development. Over the past 4 or so years of programming across various tips, specifically between federal fiscal years 2021 and most recently with federal fiscal year 2025, when we did the development of the federal fiscal years 24-28 tip, the Boston Region MPO has voted to program around $115 million towards transit capital projects. These have included the Columbus Avenue MBTA bus lanes Phase 2, the Lynn Station improvements Phase 2, the MBTA rail transformation early action items at Reading Station and Wilbur Interlocking, which is in Woburn, and also the Jackson Square Station accessibility improvements. This amounts to about $114.9 million. The Green Line extension, which was funded between federal fiscal years 2016 and 2021, also counts as a transit investment, but is not included here as it predates the transit modernization program. This is all to say that if we move on to the next slide, the current set aside of $6.5 million does not address or rather reflect the sort of historic investment that the MPO has made in transit assets. As a result, the transit transformation approach envisions two sorts of classes of projects emerging in future programming scenarios. The first is the set-aside pool. This refers to projects that fall within the $6.5 million set-aside, as Community Connections has had, for this investment program. These are the projects that may range from $250,000 to $4 million and will be programmed in the near term. Again, these fit within an advance allocation in the TIP, of which in federal fiscal years 2025, when there is that Regional Transit Authority prioritization, there's $2.5 million currently available. The second is the large capital projects. The point of this second tranche is really to continue to support those larger, potentially transformative investments, or also improvements in things like station modernization. These are generally moderate scale capital projects, as have historically been supported by the MPO. And, which is new to this new TIP development cycle, these projects will be scored alongside other projects. So effectively, the applications will be received and scored in the autumn and presented to MPO members in the spring before scenario development begins. They would likely be funded in the outer years if funding is available after municipal projects are considered first. But again, this is all up to the scenario development process, which we'll start talking about in greater earnest in around 6 months. So with that, for some key dates on the subject of what's coming up in the future now, we move on to the next slide. This slide effectively says that the Transit Transformation Program and work scope that was approved by the board in federal fiscal year 2023 has been completed. This is the last step. With that, if we move on to the next slide, where do we go from here? So November 1st, TIP applications will be opening up with closure on December 31st. This is about a 3-week longer application period than has traditionally been done. For reference, last year, applications opened November 15th and closed December 23rd. Tentatively, we are hoping to have final scoring results in early March, as has been done in previous TIP cycles, and scenario discussions in mid-March and early April. Also, the TIP process and readiness committee will be involved throughout this entire process, reviewing a universe of projects for transit transformation, preliminary scoring, and what projects were received for that scoring. So with that, I would be happy to open the floor to discussion here.
Thank you, Ethan. Any discussion, questions, comments? Nobody? All right. Thanks, Ethan. Oh, wait, Lynn Diggins.
Yeah, my hand, I just couldn't get my hand up. Hey,
No
thank
worries.
you. So thank you, Ethan, being that tentative. Asked the last point on that actually answered one of my questions, but also I want to thank you for meeting with me to discuss the scorecard and giving me more insight as to what's going on behind the cells, for lack of a better phrase, on that on the spreadsheet, because it's really impressive. And also appreciate the changes that you made, especially for the pedestrian access, with the connections. I think that's a big deal, and could truly make certain parts of transit, especially commuter rail and T stations, truly transformative. And also I appreciate the outreach to the RTAs, especially the Metro West. And I see that you try to do some outreach to CADA, and I see that you're going to continue doing that. So that's good, because and finally I have a question, because it's a phrase that I haven't heard for a while. I just need to be refamiliarized with it. And you mentioned no regrets on a project, or a type of project. And could you just go back to that and then tell me what's meant by no regrets?
Sure. So this was a phrase that had actually emerged as part of the development of the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 TIP, with the introduction of the rail transformation line items for the commuter rail projects. The idea here being that these are kind of the nuts and bolts system preservation and upgrade projects that various regional transit authorities, including the MBTA, have been pursuing, as they're a necessary foundation for future work to be performed along the corridor. So rail replacement, track alignment, improved signals, the kinds of things that need to happen first before electrification can happen.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No worries. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Melissa from North Suburban. Ethan, I just was curious. I know there had been a pilot program about the 25% design. How does that reconcile with the open application?
Yes, so for purposes of transit transformation, the project design pilot does not apply here. That said, with the project design pilot and other investment programs like Complete Streets, that will also be opening up November 1st. So it's a good question, because every investment program, Community Connections, Complete Streets, Transit Transformation, is all opening on November 1st. I will be sending out an email to prospective project proponents and board members on that date to kind of direct folks to the TIP development website, so they can access not only application forms, but also the project scorecards as well for their reference as they move to apply.
Great, thank you. And do you mind, you probably do this already, but do you mind to keep my name on there? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ethan. Next item on the agenda is the annual meeting planning, federal funding topic, taking time.
You, David. And hi again, everyone. So I have this agenda item and the next one, and what these agenda items are really intended to be are discussions between board members to help guide and direct staff about how to move forward. So the first one of these agenda items is, and I don't have a real slide deck. I only have one slide later that I'll put up there just to stimulate some conversation. So the first item is around a draft agenda item for the annual meeting. So we'll ask you all to discuss and clarify for us what you would like to have presented as part of this topic at the annual meeting, so that we can work to identify the right speaker to line up to put on the agenda and address, what you would like to address at the annual meeting. So I think it's useful here to think about the context that the annual meeting will be a slightly different kind of meeting. It'll be an in-person meeting with a hybrid or remote option. And we do expect the acting secretary to attend, and there's the potential, we've asked you all to RSVP to let us know of other chief elected officials. And we will have at least one new board member. So we want to make sure that we're setting up this agenda the way you all think makes sense, including in the context of who might be attending on November 30th at the annual meeting. So the agenda item, how I understand it so far, is a request from board members to understand more about how federal funding flows from the federal legislation all the way to the MPOs and the decisions made along the way. And that's a really big topic. It certainly is something we can tackle in a couple of different ways. I do want to acknowledge that the statewide transportation improvement program plan, which Ethan mentioned earlier, the STIP, which is a compilation of the tips approved by each MPO, does include a section that describes, I think, relatively well the different federal funding categories and MassDOT program areas. So there is a reference there. And just to be really specific, it's page 21 through 59 of the federal fiscal year 24 to 28 STIP. So there's some links there in the chat if you want to take a look at that. But I think there's still a number of ways we can approach this. So if we can go to the next slide, this will be the slide I hope will generate some conversation. So I think the question is really, what do you want to get out of this agenda item? Do you want kind of a more detailed summary and dialogue conversation about the different funding program areas that you see included in this STIP? Or is it something that you don't feel like is included in that STIP context? Is it more about higher level policy intent in terms of the funding areas and what's most relevant to MPOs and thinking about it across the country and how MPOs experience it? Or is it driving down actually into a much more detailed, deeper dive into the MassDOT and MPO prioritization process? So, and it could be something else entirely, but what we wanted to ask you to do is, now that we know what that annual meeting is going to look like roughly, to give us a little more input and help us determine how to move forward. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd love to turn it over to you to facilitate conversation and guidance.
Thank you, Tegan. Does anybody have something they'd like to start the discussion with on this issue? Eric Barassa.
Yeah, question. The first one, Tegan, here, summary and dialogue of the funding program areas included in the statewide transportation investment program. Would that be like similar to the presentation that we typically get, but like kind of with more discussion when we're developing the tip each year? Or would this be different?
David, do you want me to start answering that, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong?
Sure.
I think the answer is yes. I think it's spending a bit more time, and it would likely be a conversation with MassDOT representatives at that level. But that's would be my take on it. But certainly, David, if you or others feel differently, I am open to that.
Well, I definitely feel like some baseline information, because I think sometimes folks kind of forget all the where all the funding comes from and how it kind of gets divvied up. So I think some type of baseline data would be good for any discussion.
Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. So I would recommend the fourth bullet point, mainly because the secretary is going to be there. I mean, I'd like for whatever we do to really engage the secretary more, like, if nothing else, or the acting secretary, if nothing else, make the meeting more interesting for her, but also maybe set more of a collaborative relationship with her and the MPO and with respect to overall with funding. And I have to say, what always kind of gets me, especially with the amendments, is just how out of the blue a lot of them are for me, especially with the new projects. And then we're asked to approve the amendments. And it's like I still after 4 years, it's like, where is this coming from? Why is it that we are essentially being asked to rubber stamp it? And is there any way that we can get more insights to these projects before we are asked to send out the amendment? And this, I'm sure, is probably a case of be careful what you ask for, because the next thing I know, I'm getting 10 gigabytes of files. So maybe this is out of scope of what you are asking us for here, but I just want to put it as something that is something I continually struggle with. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis G. and Betty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to see, in addition to some of the flow of the dollars from federal and how it gets down into the state level and how it gets parceled out, also to look at what other MPOs processes are there. What are the different options and what are the different flow that other MPOs have. I think that'd be good. I don't think we have a good handle of that. I think some of us have a understanding of how our MPO works, or our state works, but how others, I think, are probably less known. And I like to have some aspect of that, especially for the new secretariat, to hear that.
Jen Rowe.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my thoughts around this are similar to Dennis's. I have invited the mayor, should have confirmation about whether she'll be able to attend about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the meeting. And I guess for given her presence and the secretary, and then also new board members, I think kind of having a higher level view at kind of the overall intent of MPOs and how they are configured and how federal funding enters the region, both in ours and in others, could be kind of helpful kind of orientation to people who may be less in the weeds on MPO work. Thank you.
Tom Bent.
Thank you. This kind of coincides with what Dennis and Jen just brought up. And I don't know if it ties into bullet point 2, but we have also asked the mayor to attend the annual meeting, and we're waiting to hear back on scheduling. But one of my thoughts was if we could have maybe a representative of AMPO come out to speak to us so that we can get a better feel for what's going on the national level with all this. And this may be a good time to have that representative speak at the conference to discuss that, so we get a bigger picture than just what we're seeing in the Boston MPO. Thank you.
Yep. Others?
This is Melissa. I didn't have my hand up.
That's okay.
Okay. Quick question, I guess. If we're going to ask the federal government, my question is there an MPO or best practices nationwide that they see that, optimize how the fundings flow to get kind of the best work done? It's kind of a high level question, but I'm kind of curious because we get in our own bubble, and I'm wondering if there's other lessons to be learned or structures to understand from other, I guess, even states and, regions within other states, acknowledging that probably there are state regulations that probably impact that. And then I think also I'd be interested in understanding when you talk about the flow. I think maybe because I'm still new, I feel like a lot of MPO is very tip oriented, but I know there's a lot more money flowing through the federal government, through the MPO, but we really don't talk about that as much, and I'd like to understand that.
Ken Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, looking at the 4 bullets, they talk about funding program areas, funding programs, funding flows, funding sources. Those could all mean different things. I guess in terms of what I think about in terms of funding sources, or funding programs, that I think about the federal funding. The money comes to the state by funding categories, which is, there's NHPP money, there's like 8 or 10, there's all other, it can get quite complicated, but the money, the way the money flows through the state to the MPOs, the target funding is funding category neutral in general. So I would maybe suggest that it's not to spend a whole lot of time talking about all the different federal, funding sources, because it's not. I mean, if folks are interested in it, that's great. I mean, it's good to be, people to know what's going on, and we can do that at any time. But I'm not sure that would be something in terms of prioritizing information for this meeting. That's something that we should spend a whole lot of time on.
Thank you, Ken. Others? Dennis, do you have your hand up for a second comment, or is it still up from the first?
It's still up from the first, sorry.
No worries. Figured it was, but I didn't want to ignore it.
Yeah, I know
Other
keep figuring out how to
comments?
take my hand down.
Other comments? All right, so Dagan, I don't think we got an answer. Like there was so much discussion. I'm not sure what the focus of this. I don't know what the focus is now of this presentation.
Would it be reasonable to sort of to present an option? I could present an option and see how you all react to that. Since there is an interest in everything from the high level to the detailed level, which is understandable. If you all think it is, again, I'm thinking about the audience at the annual meeting. If you all think it would be interesting, I have just at the annual conference for AMPO sat in on a number of discussions about the federal kind of national policy level and how that's influencing how different states are doing their work and kind of the relevancy for MPOs. And so it could be that there is a conversation at that level that might be interesting and intriguing to have at the annual meeting. And then we could follow up perhaps with working with our state partners to get into some additional level of detail in future conversations. And I'm not sure if that hits, I don't think it hits everybody's comments, but it seems to hit a number of them without having to go into a deep dive of every federal funding program area, rather sort of the general intent and kind of policy framework in which we're working as MPOs.
Yes, but so if we're going to have AMPO, we have to have a discussion about how we're different, right? And we're different in many different ways. The first of which is I'm the chair, okay? But the second of which is we provide all the match. So other MPOs, cities and towns are direct recipients of federal funds. That's not true here. Other MPOs, cities and towns provide the match. That's not true here. Other MPOs get their allocation based on the program categories and where the federal government says X percentage of CMAQ has to be programmed through the MPOs, whereas we provide more money to the MPOs based on our target than would otherwise flow to the MPOs based on the federal categories. So all of that has to somehow be discussed either by AMPO or by somebody else, because it's not, there's a lot of discussion about why we're different and how we're different. And we need to make sure that it's not AMPO's responsibility to know how we're different. That's, I guess, our responsibility to explain that and why and how and all the parameters around it.
Yeah, if I may respond, one of the AMPO slogans is if you know one MPO, you know one MPO. So one of the things that they are very sensitive to is that all MPOs and states operate a bit differently. And so one of the interesting perspectives I think they can bring to bear is kind of sharing that there are different ways in which MPOs do it, but there are also common challenges. And so they're pretty good at navigating those two things. And while we are unique, I believe, or maybe one other instance where the chairship is held by the state, we aren't unique in terms of the state providing the match. It's not as common, but it does exist. So there could be some parallels and examples to certain ways that other MPOs work that could be interesting for people to hear. But what I think AMPO is good at doing is kind of wrapping it up into the high level, sort of like the relevancy of MPO work and federal policies and what those common challenges are per that comment, and kind of where there is where there are things that we can talk about in a more common way, even though we're all different. So I agree. I think it's a very complicated conversation to have. I'm just hearing from folks some interest in understanding the range of sort of some of the ranges of possibilities, the high level policy environment, and I think that they can provide some nice, relatively neutral perspective on that.
Other comments? Jinro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I like the idea of breaking this into two different or two kind of complementary presentations and geared to the different audiences. And I like the idea of the kind of more AMPO higher level federal perspective being the one at the annual meeting. And then I think we could then benefit greatly by, after having that perspective, getting a more kind of Massachusetts focused presentation following that. Thank you.
Yep. Kristen Guichard.
Well, I'm not going to repeat it, but I just second what Jen mentioned in her statements. I like that idea as well. Thank you.
Yep. Other comments? All right, Tegan, do you have what you need?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Next item on the agenda is a policy discussion of the letters of support for federal discretionary grants.
Yes, so similarly structured, I'd like to set the stage a little bit and then ask you all to give us as staff guidance on how you would like to move forward. So, as you all, I think, are very aware, there are quite a few federal discretionary grant opportunities that are stemming from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I think that we're seeing a pretty high volume and certainly a scramble in terms of trying to develop the capacity to put together applications for these federal discretionary grants as they roll out. We don't hear about all of those application processes as they're happening, but when we do, it's either to request a letter of support from the MPO. It could be if our federal partners are reaching out to understand if there's a duplicative effort in terms of grant applications, or we hear about it further down the line when the MPO is asked to program the grants into your UPWP or TIP. For example, in the TIP amendment that Ethan just presented, where we're programming in Boston's Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So either way, because the MPO is at times asked to submit a letter of support, rather than trying to tackle it in an ad hoc way, we would be very helpful for this board to establish either your policy or a preferred process that you would like us as staff to work with you to follow in response to those requests when they come. And it also gives us an ability to proactively communicate what those expectations might be, so that it'll make it easier for applicants to understand whether or not they'd like to get a letter of support. So I just want to also just say, like, theoretically, getting a letter of support from the MPO could enhance the attractiveness of an application, because it is another agency confirming that a project is in line with goals. And in this case, with the MPO, it's the regional goals. So that's why there might be value for municipalities in terms of reaching out to the MPO. And on the MPO side, there might be a value of being kind of, engaged earlier in some of these application processes. So that's just a little bit of my editorial opinion on top of it. But the question really is, do you all want to communicate something in terms of expectations and process if we are requested to submit an MPO letter of support? So if you go to the next slide, again, just a couple of stimulating questions. Do you want to set a policy about whether or not you're willing to provide a letter of support? Do you want to proactively communicate expectations about a process? For example, recently MassDOT communicated, David, I can't remember exactly what was said, but if someone would like a letter of support from the secretary, it should come at least 2 weeks in advance, I think is what the criteria was. You know, do you want to establish something like that? Do you want to establish a process for evaluating the application's alignment with your goals? Do you want to do it at a board meeting if feasible? Do you want to delegate that to staff, or have both as options? So just kind of want to open that up for conversation for you to give us some guidance to move forward.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Tegan, thank you for bringing this up, because I was unaware that the MPO does weigh in on letters of support. I don't know if we've done in the past, but no, I've really never seen one. Because I don't recall having seen a letter of support for a project. And I guess I'd like to take the opportunity to thank MAPC in the city of Framingham. We put together a grant application for a project that's on the long-range transportation plan, the at grade crossing in Framingham at 126 and 135. It's a project that we just adopted recently in the long-range transportation plan after some discussion. So we're hoping to look at that. It's a project that had some conceptual designs a number of years ago. Some of the conditions have changed, so we're looking at what the alternative solutions may be in that project. It's still a very important project, but it would probably be nice to have an MPO letter of support. I just was not aware of that being a possibility. So I'd like to see some sort of policy around how that is developed and granted. I think it's a great idea.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I agree with what Dennis is saying. I think, our support should be helpful, ideally, but it would be also good to just, at least for us to know the basic project information of the project we're supporting. And in most instances, we're going to probably fully support them, but it would be good, maybe something similar to what, MassDOT does for the request for the secretary support letters. Just knowing the basic information. I don't want to make the hurdle too high, but even if it's as simple as whoever's the applicant sharing the application with staff, and then the staff kind of providing an overview of the requests and the information on the project, so we have the base project information. Just to understand the projects better, and probably in a lot of instances, like in Dennis's case, it could impact projects in our universe too, hopefully for good reasons. So I don't know, I was just trying to think of like a way to at least get us the information beforehand, and gives a little time to just make sure, yeah, we're all great with this application, and ideally supporting a letter.
Thank you, Jim. Ally Clayman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with everything on this slide and what Dennis and Jim just said, that with reconnecting communities, the MBTA was actually asked for numerous letters of support. We wrote one for the Framingham project, and we followed a similar sort of process as this, like basically asking the project proponents for a draft narrative so we could understand, checking with project management and technical teams internally just to make sure that what was being proposed was aligned with MBTA goals and projects, and then drafting a letter. So I just want to say that I think all of this makes sense and is similar to a lot of the process that we have been following.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In general, I'm fine with this. I would say we should really determine under what situations we would not give a letter of support, and then how we would explain that. And I have a question, how many are these letters are you anticipating? Because that will, I think, determine the extent to which we say this is something staff should do at the same time. If it's too much for staff, I can't imagine us as board members having enough time. So what are you anticipating in terms of amounts through you, Chair, to maybe taken?
Tegan?
The answer is I don't know. I think one of the reactions to being more proactive about communicating what the process is that we could see an increased set of requests for letters of support. You know, I don't know if Mass DOT or the MBTA can say anything about the volume they've seen, and I don't know if we would see a similar volume. But what I would strongly request is that we set up a process that is kind of simple, that is as simple as it can be without excluding, you know, sharing basic information. So, for example, I would want to have some kind of form letter that we might tweak a little bit for an application, but not write something new for every single one that, you know, the board wanted to support. So we would want to come up with ways to streamline it. I think that's the right word, not simple, but the streamlined approach would be important.
Yeah, we got roughly probably a dozen for reconnecting communities. Right. So, and that, while that's statewide, a large percentage of them came from the Boston region. Tom, I think you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to agree with pretty much all the comments that have been said up to date. I think it would be good to identify the process for communities requesting these letters. I did have one question. Now, I know sometimes these grants come up quickly. Would there be, if there was not time for this to go through whatever process we develop, would it be appropriate that either the US chair or the vice chair could make that decision on whether or not a letter of recommendation could go out? If again, it was a short time frame, and you know, I do know that happens with some of these grants sometimes.
Right. So that's part of why we're having this discussion, I think.
Yeah.
I would, however, note that it's not that the grants come up and have to be done in an hour. It's that people take forever to decide they're going to do a grant and then submit a request. And then it's, oh my God, it has to be in a day. And it's like, well, but wait, the grant came out a month ago. Why does it have to be done in a day? Yeah. So but that's part of what Tegan wants to have this discussion about can we authorize staff to make this decision on our behalf? Can we authorize Eric and I to make this decision on our behalf? Because it certainly, I would not be comfortable making the decision for the MPO. I'd be okay if you want Eric to make it. I'd be okay if you want Eric and I to make it. I'd be okay if we want staff to make it. I'd be okay if we say, you know, again, to all the communities, you have 2 weeks, you have to get it to us 2 weeks in advance. We meet every 2 weeks. That shouldn't be hard, theoretically. And then we would, as an MPO, take them all up and vote them individually or as a package or whatever. But that's I think what Tegan's trying to get at. We need to have some kind of process because, you know, in the last go round, I don't know if we got any requests, but if we did, we didn't sign off on them because we hadn't had a discussion at the MPO about how to do this. David Kozis.
All right, well, maybe I just changed what I was going to say based on what you just said, David. But I was thinking that I don't think that every single letter needs to be discussed at an MPO meeting. You know, they're generally helpful, or at least they wouldn't hurt. But, you know, I was thinking maybe just leave it up to the chair or the vice chair or staff, I guess, to sign off on the letters, you know, on behalf of all of us. Or if there's ever a case that anybody thinks that there's questions about a particular project or that somebody wouldn't agree with it, you know, in those cases, maybe bring them to the MPO for a discussion. But I think that would probably be unusual.
Right, and that is certainly something I hadn't thought about, David, but yes, you could theoretically, as the MPO, delegate it to Eric and I to make the decision. And if Eric and I either disagree or think we should say no, we'd bring it to you and you could override us. I mean, that is certainly another possibility that I hadn't even thought about. So thank you. Rob King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Comments are brief. I support this. I think it's a great idea. I think the MPO generally supporting a project would go a long way to support some of the applications. My only comment is out of respect for staff time and out of the respect for the MPO's time, I think we should be working to standardize in the language that comes out of an MPO support letter, not just out of respect of time, but I'd also hate to find us in a place where a community or a project feels that we are advocating more strongly for one project than another. So it's just a thought.
Thank you, Rob. Sarah Lee.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to chime in. I think if we're going to do a form letter, I would probably recommend having some text in there that just says, with some qualifiers saying, this support assumes broad, support by other stakeholders within this context. I know a lot of projects can have conflicts along the way, and I don't think we're gonna want to get in the trenches there of like vetting individual projects and hearing from people that may disagree. So I think what what I'm proposing is what MassDOT does, which is they generally support anything that is along the, the context of what MassDOT normally supports, and then just puts qualifiers along the way, saying, our support is contingent on not, major obstacles coming along the way. So I don't know, I guess I just probably defer to what MassDOT does and try to follow those similar guidelines. But I don't think we want to be in a place where every single project is being vetted, because a lot of these can get complicated, especially at the early stages. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And so so we don't do, to Taken's point, we don't do a form letter, but we do a standardized letter. So there's a paragraph at the beginning that says what we're supporting. We support the community X's request for Z amount of money for this program. Then there's a paragraph about the benefits of the project, so that the people who are reviewing know we actually paid attention and read and know what's going on. And then there's a final paragraph. Well, then there's another paragraph if there's anything uniquely interesting that we want to highlight. And then there's a paragraph that says, again, reconfirms we are supportive of this project. That's generally what how our letters are trying to be written now. We also try to eliminate any effusive adjectives, because we don't want to accidentally one time say, we're wholeheartedly in support of this, and then accidentally in the other one say we're in support. So we try to just make it as plain and simple as possible. That's not because we're not wholeheartedly in support of things. It's because we're trying not to accidentally look like we're not. Dennis, you have your hand up again?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. This is a great discussion, actually. I was wondering if it would make sense to refer this to the operations, put it into the operations plan of what the process would be in a sort of simplified way, but a clear way. Does that make sense to have that? I don't think the group has been disbanded yet, to look at how we want to incorporate that into the operations plan so that it's somewhat clear.
That's certainly possible. I hadn't thought of that. I had assumed that the MPO would make a decision today and just tell us what they want to do, but that's certainly possible. And I would, to Sarah Lee's point, I would note that most, and I think other people's points, most of the time we're going to say yes, right? The only time we will say no probably is if somebody's proposing something that goes against our adopted policies, right? So as an example, Brian King keeps reminding us that whether we have a stated policy or not, the MPO is opposed to doing things that would increase single occupancy vehicle traffic, right? So presumably if somebody was proposing a new roadway, which nobody is, but if somebody was, we would presumably say, no, we're not going to recommend that. But by and large, most of the application and requests we're going to get, I think, are things we're going to be willing to say yes to. So that I don't know if that helps with deciding what the policy should be or not, but I'm happy to either decide today what it should be. I'm happy to refer it to the operations committee. I'm happy to do other things, and I will call on you, Seth, in a minute. I do see your hand up, but we're taking comments from members first. But don't put your hand down, because then I will forget. So, any other comments from members before I call on members of the public? Seeing none. Seth Gadbois. And I hope I pronounced your name right.
It was probably Gadbois several generations ago. It's just Gadbois. But thank you. Transportation attorney with Conservation Law Foundation. I was just wondering, this may be conflating a couple things, but if a project or a subset of a type of projects that's already on the MPO's radar, say in the long range transportation plan or other similar kind of document, is there an ability to have like an expedited process for, like, I know that Alston Multimodal, which Mr. Muller, I know you're very like you gave a presentation at the board meeting yesterday on, but like a project like that is already on the radar, is already being funded. Is there an expedited process for that? Or if it's not so specifically outlined in a document like long range transportation plan or something else, is there a way to add like, hey, if you want a letter of support, here's how you do it, here's what to expect from us in the future, just in the interest of helping municipalities, other entities understand that process?
Thank you. So yes, I think, yeah, from my perspective, I think it's a given that if a project is in the TIP or in the plan, we would of course give them a letter of support, right? To Dennis's point about 126, 135, it's in the long range plan. It would be really weird if they said to us, can you give us a letter of support to get planning grant money? And we said no, right? So yes, I think excellent point. In any process we have, I assume that is a given. That if a project's in the TIP or a project's in the plan, yes, by definition, we've already taken a public support for it, and we will just include that in our letter. Yes, once we have a process, Tegan and her staff will email it out to all of the 97 communities so that they know that, hey, if you want us to send you a letter, number one, they know they can ask us for a letter, and number two, they know how to ask us and what our parameters are. Other comments? Like, we need to actually help Tegan here at some point about figuring out, are we deciding today or are we referring it to committee? But Christopher Delorio.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering, so just for clarification on this letter of support, so would we also, if a town had like a project outside of the MPO world, like say we're going for Mass Works grant or something like that for a new roadway, is that something that the MPO could potentially provide a letter of support for?
I don't know. I mean, I think we have limited ourselves, at least in this discussion, to federal discretionary programs because they're clearly federal programs have to be programmed. The money would ultimately have to be programmed by the MPO. We have a nexus to that issue. So I don't think we were thinking about Mass Works or other type of state funded projects. I don't think.
Okay.
But if the MPO wants to, we can certainly have that discussion.
Thanks.
Yep, no worries. So we can try to make a decision today, or we can refer this to an operations committee. Now, I shouldn't say problem. The issue with referring it to the operations committee is they will take whatever time they're going to take. And in the meantime, we will not be submitting letters on behalf of the MPO for projects that are solicited. I mean, that ask for upcoming grant opportunities. But that's the only, we haven't submitted any letters yet. So, I mean, it's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it does mean that for the next grant round, we probably won't be done with this issue, I think. So what do people want to do? Jinro.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just thought I would try putting a concrete proposal forward. I guess I feel like I would be comfortable, given kind of the time sensitivity of some of these applications. Well, of course, we should be working on them very far in advance, and the likelihood that the vast majority are going to be supported. I feel like I would be comfortable vesting the decision making to you, Mr. Chair, and to Eric as Vice Chair, and as long as you don't flag it as something that we should be brought to the board, then the kind of decision can be made in a more timely manner. I would say that the municipality's writing should provide, as we mentioned, like a blurb, and that ought to be shared for members' notice at the next meeting, but the decision could be made before the next meeting. And I think just as long as it's clear that there is this possibility that you do find it needs to come to the board, and that's like on our minds in terms of our timelines. I think as long as that clarity is there, I think that would be comfortable with that.
Thank you, Jen. Eric?
So Jen, just to clarify, your proposal would be that the chair and the vice chair can approve letters of support for federal discretionary grants. If the chair and the vice chair feel like it's unclear whether the project aligns with the MPO's sort of goals, we would then bring that to the full MPO for discussion. Is that the gist of it?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think also Jen mentioned that after we've signed all these letters, like if we will also let the MPO know, hey, we sent support letters on these, right? And provide those letters to the MPO. And that way, if the MPO says, hey, I'm not sure you should have signed this one, we can have that discussion later on. Not necessarily about a particular project, but about why you and I have misinterpreted what the MPO supports, I guess. Dennis, G, and Betty.
Thanks. I would concur with that. I would only ask that whatever we decide today, if we decide today, is that we put it somewhere so that the policy is clear and we all understand it. That's all.
Yep. Lynn Diggins.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if that were a motion, I would have seconded it. I said, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to take comments, and then we are going to let Jen make her motion and Lynn second it, but I will take the rest of the comments who have their hands up. John Romano.
I just say that I support that.
Thank you. Tom Bent.
Same thing here. I support Jen's proposal.
All right. Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, I just want to say we want to make sure that whatever we say is accurate. So if we say the MPO supports this, then that should be means that a vote of the MPO was taken. If it was a decision made by the chair or the vice chair or whatever, then you can just say, the chair or the vice chair of the MPO, based upon the policies of our MPO, recommends it. Or you can also say anytime that the MPO recommends this because it is on our tip, something like that. So as long as it's accurate.
Yeah, so I'm not doing that. Okay, just so you know, this is a delegated authority that they're going to vote on to give Eric and I the authority to speak on behalf of the MPO. If people are uncomfortable with that, I am perfectly okay with that. But I am not going to get in a position where some of my letters say the MPO took a vote and we support this, and some of the letters say, hey, Eric and I looked at it and it's, yeah, we think the MPO would generally support this. If we're doing this, if we're doing this delegation, it's a delegation of the authority to speak on behalf of the MPO on this issue. And like I said, I'm okay with either way. I don't care. I'm just not going to get stuck in a middle ground where things are on the tip. I can say the MPO supports this, and things that haven't yet made it to the tip, I go, Eric and I have reviewed it, and it sort of defeats the purpose, I think. Eric? Eric, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think that I guess my issue is I know that there are, we've got Massport, we've got MBTA, and the concept that the MPO supports it implies that those agencies support projects too. And I just want to make sure that they're aware of what the MPO might be. I just want to make sure that like Massport or MBTA aren't like, oh, we weren't aware that right, but the project that sort of touches us, nobody came to us seeking approval, and sort of the MPO has like spoken for us. And so I'm trying to anticipate potential issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if we took a vote of the MPO and the MPTA voted no, but the vote still passed, I would sign a letter as MPO chair that says the MPO supports this project, whether the MBTA or MassDOT or the Massport voted no. Also, in our discussions between you and me when we're making these decisions, I will have checked with the MBTA and Massport and Mass Highway Division, and if there is something that we think is so egregious we shouldn't support it, we will say no, or I will on their behalf say no, and then you and I won't have a singular vote, or we'll both vote no, and then that one will take to the MPO and they can override us, right? I mean, I think I appreciate your concern, but part of what is going to happen here is that if they delegate it, is it's my responsibility to make sure that the state members have reviewed this if it touches them, and that they're okay with us saying yes. Because if they say no, you and I will have a discussion, and then we will either take it to the MPO or we will decide that there's a way we can say yes, I think.
I think with that understanding, then, yeah, I absolutely support this as well.
All right, so Jinro's going to make a motion, and then I'm going to call on, I think I said Lynn Diggins to second it. So Jinro, make your motion, please.
All right, let's see if I can get this concisely. I will make a motion to delegate the authority to write letters in support of municipal applications for federal funds, and also the discretion to defer that decision to an MPO board meeting.
You, Lynn Diggins.
Well done, Ms. Rowan. Diggins seconds.
Thank you. So motion having been made and seconded, and to be clear, we're delegating authority to Eric and I to make a joint decision. And if we disagree or we decide no, we will bring it back to the MPO. We also have agreed that we will bring any letters we say yes to back to the MPO after they've been signed and sent off. On that motion, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Ally Clayman,
Ally Clayman, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Amira Patterson,
Amira Patterson, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Eric Molinari,
Eric Molinari, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Rob King,
King, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tintakoulis, we'll come back. Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Okay, motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, Tegan, we didn't actually talk about the amount of advance notice, but your staff has to put this together and send it out to the 97 cities and towns. And I think you can say, you know, we would request a 2-week advance notice, right? Not there's a deadline. If you don't get it, we're not going to consider it. But something that lets them know, hey, get us in advance, okay? All right. Next item on the agenda. Thank you, everybody, for that discussion, by the way. Both of these discussions were really, really well done. Thank you so much for thinking about this and sharing your thoughts. Next item is member items. Are there any? Jinro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself. I know many of you, but I'm in a new role with the city as a regional planner for the Boston Transportation Department. This, as such, I will be the primary representative for BTD on the MPO. The fact that the mayor has created this role is really part of her conviction that our goals as a city cannot be achieved alone, and we must move forward in close partnership with our municipal, regional, and state partners. I was pleased to see this kind of belief reflected also in Go Boston 2030, which is our overarching planning document, and it begins, we envision a city in a region where all residents have better and more equitable travel choices. So I was really lucky to begin my career in transportation planning with MPO staff. As I developed the processes and materials to engage stakeholders in the MPO's work, I became acquainted with many of you, all trying to advance transportation initiatives in this complex and dynamic set of governance structures. My appreciation for this board and its committees and working groups as forums for information sharing and joint decision-making really grew deep. I've been working for the city of Boston as an active transportation planner for the past 4 years, working on things like Boston's bike parking guidelines and the quarter-long Mass Ave Better Bike project. As those lanes on Mass Ave has gone in, I've really internalized the potential for transformative projects to shape the options available to our residents and the travel choices we all make. And so I have so much respect and gratitude for everyone engaged in this hugely challenging, yet urgently necessary work of changing our streets and our infrastructure. I've now really thrilled to have come full circle and to be a representative on this board for BTD. I'm really fortunate to have Matt Moran and Pat Hoey, who are going to stay on as alternates, as thought partners, and beyond grateful for the knowledge, experience, and thoughtfulness that Jim brings as my fellow Boston representative, and all the support provided by BPDA staff, including Joe Blankenship and Daniela Espinosa. So thank you so much for this opportunity to serve the residents of Boston, not only, but also all of our regions, interconnected and interdependent communities. It's an honor and privilege I take to heart, and I'm excited to be among you. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I think I can speak for the MPO when I say we're amazingly grateful that the mayor has created a regional planning function. Also, we're 100% supportive of the fact that it's you. And I'd just like to say thank you for agreeing to take on the chairmanship of the TIP subcommittee. Eric?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind folks that we have formally put together the MPO municipal election ballots. Just to remind folks, the seats are all unopposed, but we have sent those out for voting nonetheless. We sent distinct electronic ballot links to all the municipal chief executive officials in the North Shore Task Force subregion, as well as the SWAP subregion, North Shore Task Force, that's the city of Beverly, running for that seat again. And in the SWAP subregion, that is the town of Rentham, which will be exciting that we will have a new member. Just want to remind folks, just make sure your mayors or your select board chairs are aware of the voting. And then we also sent out a separate link for the 2 at-large seats, the at-large city seat, which the city of Everett is running for again, and the at-large town seat, which the town of Brookline is running again. So just a reminder to feel free to follow up with any mayors or select board chairs. Those kind of go directly to them. Even though they're unopposed, we still like to see voting. So thanks all. And we'll formally announce everything at next Wednesday's virtual MAPC council meeting.
Thank you, Eric. Any other comments or questions or member items? Seeing none, can we get a motion and a second to adjourn? And please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, I will second that motion.
Thank you. And please everybody who's on the TIP committee, don't forget there is a meeting following this meeting. Everyone have a great day. And without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. See you in a couple weeks.